Thanks, Caitlin. I'm glad to be here.
For viewers who don't remember this case, can you walk us through what happened in 1996 and why this moment is so significant?
Well, it was February of 1996 was this incident, and the group was called Brothers to the Rescue. It was some South Florida people, a lot of them of Cuban heritage, that flew airplanes, private small airplanes, Cessnas, various times to assist Cubans that were fleeing the island nation. They would look for rafts and boats out in the ocean and call in a Coast Guard or other assistance from other ships, because a lot of times they would leave the island in rickety ships that really weren't seaworthy, and I believe a lot of people, died, drowned, trying to make that passage to the U.S. So the Brothers to the Rescue were out there to try and provide some assistance. There were some reports, though, previously that they had flown over Cuba and dropped leaflets as well. So there may have been some times prior to this where they actually had invaded Cuban airspace, which certainly would have raised the ire in Cuba.
There's so much to unpack here, so much information, and so much time that has passed. Why bring these charges 30 years later?
Well, a couple of reasons. We know that the president is trying to put some additional pressure on Cuba. I believe that this helps. It turns out that one of these people, one of the pilots, is actually in jail in Florida now on charges of having lied on visa applications, false statements. So he can't. This is Luis Gonzalez Pardo Rodriguez, one of the pilots, and he came to the U.S. in 2024 on some humanitarian program, and he wanted to stay in the U.S. And part of the questions they go through during the immigration interview, he's alleged to have lied about his previous experience in Cuba, and so he is in prison now, I believe, awaiting sentencing for those charges. But if those, and a lot of times, it's not serious time that you would get on some of those charges. Although in today's world, it could easily be sent back to Cuba. But since he's now indicted on this, he's going to have another trial. He's going to face charges. This puts U.S. Prosecutors in a good spot, FBI and U.S. Attorney's offices, because now they got somebody who probably wants to play let's make a deal. So he may be more willing to give up some information about what actually occurred back then, and that could help build the case against Raúl Castro and the other four pilots.
How unusual is it to indict a former foreign head of state like this?
Not unheard of. The U.S. has indicted leaders in other countries previously. The difficult part, obviously, is getting them here on U.S. soil or into a country or location where they can be extradited, or where the U.S. actually wants to carry out the extradition. Sometimes they may be a little bit for show, but we'll have to see. Raul Castro is 94 years old. He was president of Cuba, but the indictment took place when he was the defense minister. And there's some intrigue to this as well, because there's been a back and forth spy program between Cuba and the U.S. Where a lot of Cubans come to the U.S. Many thousands in different times, and Cuba has been able to sneak some spies into the country. There's been some high-level spies that have been trapped here, and what they did was they infiltrated Brothers to the Rescue. They had the information about their flight times, what their missions were, and they got that information back to Cuba, and Cuba trained and planned and prepared for one of these flights to arrive, which they did. And in February of 1996, there were actually three airplanes. They shot down two of them. The three airplanes were in the air, and the Cuban fighters shot down two of them, killing four people, three Americans and one permanent resident alien.
Wow. That is a lot of intrigue. A lot of people are asking, though, he's 94 years old, he's being indicted. Is this going to change anything? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, Cuba's having a tough time right now. They're not getting oil. Their economy is in trouble. Country has been in trouble now for quite a long time. You go back to the 50s, before the revolution and Fidel Castro taking power. It was a beautiful tourist site in the Caribbean. The hotels and casinos and restaurants and people from all over going to visit it. The communist program took that away, and it's been, I guess, approaching 70 years now. And if this regime was to fall, based on maybe some of this pressure and some of the difficulties in the economy and other world issues going on, then certainly it's possible that Cuba could once again turn around and become a gem of the Caribbean again, and there's probably a lot of Cubans in Florida that would like to head back home. We've heard them say that for decades as well. So it'll be an interesting time the next couple of years. I'm glad to have heard the president say he doesn't expect to escalate this, because that would be,
Yeah,
you know,
Cuba's president is calling this a political move. How do you see this impacting U.S.-Cuba relations?
well, the U.S.-Cuba relations are certainly rough right now. As you know, there's reports that they had attacked embassy personnel with some sound devices, damaging the hearing of many embassy employees over the last couple of years. There's an active spy program that happens between that Cuba sends here, and they've infiltrated. They've had an ambassador, they've had members of the Defense Intelligence Agency, they've had academians. They've been able to get spies in high places. So that makes it very difficult for the relationship as well. And now, you know, one more thing is we all saw U.S. military and law enforcement do an excellent and expert operation a few months ago going into Venezuela and capturing Maduro, who also was indicted. And he's in New York with his wife, both of them in jail awaiting trial now. So the question was, well, are we going to do the same kind of thing, you know, or can we do the same kind of thing in Cuba? I think it'd be a lot more difficult in Cuba. Certainly in Venezuela, I'm not sure they believed we were going to do it. So there's sort of the element of surprise, or the element of disbelief at least. So Cuba is going to be ready if something like this were to occur. And unfortunately, they've got the capability to strike back at the U.S. in some small way. But they've built up a small fleet of drones. They've got some aircraft. You know, we don't want to see a battle within 90 miles of our shoreline coming from Cuba. So the U.S. would have to set up some additional defense procedures to protect the country. So I don't think they want to see that happen. I hope
Yeah, and
not.
just lastly, we only have